Soto sends this one to center. That sends Thomas back. Still going back. He's hit the wall. It's out of here!
He is the best hitter in baseball.
He's a generational talent.
Soto magic!
This guy is an automatic Hall of Famer.
Pay my guy! Pay Juan Soto!
I'll be open to this in every single team. I don't have any doors closed or anything like that.
Have you got my money? What? Tell me where's my money?
He's going to be a 26-year-old free agent. The world is his oyster. I believe he's going to get more money than Ohtani. He's going to beat his present-day value, which was $460. I will bet you right now that he gets more than that.
You asked me, like, top of head, based on precedent, Juan Soto signs a 14-year, $650 million contract.
He's going to get something that starts with a 7, if not an 8. Not a 5 or a 6, but a 7. He's worth it.
Need to get my money. Gotta have my money.
The money was there, and we have a logo swap alert on SportsCenter. New York stays the same, but that logo is changing from the Yankees to the Mets. The Soto deal is done. Welcome to SportsCenter. I'm Nicole. He's Michael.
Yeah, it was the free agent decision of the baseball offseason, Juan Soto. He seemingly liked New York so much that he wants to stay. He just wanted a new jersey. Yes. $765 million over 15 years. That's what the Mets will dole out for the 4-time All-Star and former batting champ. Now, sources telling Jeff Passan all these numbers, and Jeff is also reporting that this deal does not include any deferred money. Now, in addition to an opt-out after 5 years, escalators in the deal could max out the total value at $800 million.
This is insanity!
The Mets will be Soto's 4th team since he entered the league 6 years ago. Now, Steve Cohen, of course, is the man who signs the checks for the Mets, and he opened up that checkbook all the way open for this contract. $765 passes Shohei Ohtani for the largest total value contract in MLB history. We mentioned the 15 years. That's also the longest contract ever.
There's a lot of numbers to take in here. So the one guy we need to talk to now is Jeff Passan. Like, I'm trying to get my eyeballs back in my head here a little bit. Let's just start with the real basic question. How did all of this go down?
It went down, Nicole, over a frenzied 5-week process where teams, frankly, saw Juan Soto as the true apple of their eye. He is 26 years old. He is one of the 3 best hitters in baseball, and all teams needed to get him was a big bag of money, and that biggest bag came from the New York Mets. The $765 million not only sets a record, not only exceeding Shohei Ohtani's deal last year, but let's remember, Shohei Ohtani's deal is almost entirely deferred. The net present value of that was about $470 million. There is not a single dollar deferred in Juan Soto's contract. So not only did this beat Ohtani's deal, it absolutely crushed it, and it is the biggest contract in professional sports history.
Michael just said, obviously, it's Steve Cohen who's the one who has to open the checkbook, and he opened it all the way up for this deal. You texted with him after the deal was announced. What did he tell you?
You know, it's really interesting because when Steve Cohen bought this team back in 2020, the expectations were absolutely enormous from Mets fans. For decades, they had languished with ownership that was not willing to spend like a New York team, like the New York Yankees typically would. Steve Cohen promised to change that. And, you know, he went out and got Francisco Lindor and signed him to an extension. He tried to get Carlos Correa, whose physical wasn't good, and ended up going to the Minnesota Twins. But he hadn't had that one moment, that one big free agent who changed the future, changed the trajectory of this franchise. And when I was texting with Steve Cohen, he said, very simply, just a big day for the franchise.
Yeah, a huge day for the franchise. What I'm curious about, too, none of this is deferred money, so it's $765 all right now. But there are also escalators in that contract. You say you could take this north of $800 million. What do some of those escalators look like?
The escalators are tied in, Nicole, to the opt-out in the deal. He has an opt-out after year 5 of the contract, and if he chooses not to opt out, the average annual value of the deal will go up from $51 million to $55 million. And remember, because this is such an enormous deal, 15 years, longer than any that we have seen in the history of Major League Baseball. All those years, tack on, all that money builds up, and all of a sudden you've got a deal that's $765 that turns into something even more.
Something more in monopoly money.
Yes,
That's
pretty
the
much.
only way to describe it. Jeff Passan, always a pleasure.
All right, for a little more perspective, we bring in ESPN baseball analyst Eduardo Perez. Eduardo, first let me get your reaction to the contract itself. $765 for 15 and no deferred money. What does that say to you?
It's impressive. You know what it is? 51 million AAV per year. Juan Soto just eclipsed everything that we even thought that we were talking about, this hot stove, to be able to get that amount of money with no deferral whatsoever. He automatically, easily becomes their best hitter in the lineup. But my goodness, Juan Soto right now with this $765 million, I would say that's probably over $35 million more than I thought he was going to get, and really impressive and really deserves it. Right there in the perfect storm. The New York Yankees going after him. He already showed that he can play in pinstripes. You have the Dodgers interested in him as well. The Boston Red Sox, the only team also north of the border, the Toronto Blue Jays in. This was a perfect storm, perfect season for Juan Soto. The only thing he missed was a world championship.
Yeah, it seemed like so many teams had the money. It's about how much money, how many years, and you mentioned if any of that money is going to be deferred. Whatever he saw from the Mets is what he wanted to sign for. So let's talk about the team aspect of this, because if we go back to this past season, for maybe the majority of the season, at least more than half of it, the Mets were a disappointment based on their preseason expectations. They got hot late. They made a nice postseason run. So then you set the expectation for 2025. You mentioned he automatically becomes their best hitter. But what does he do to the overall lineup there in New York that would potentially make them one of the favorites in the National League to get to the World Series?
Well, look what he did just as a direct impact with Aaron Judge. It made Aaron more pitches in the zone than he had ever seen because of Juan Soto's on-base percentage. This past year, his on-base percentage, again, over 400, to be exact, 419. That's 75 points higher than the highest on-base percentage of the New York Met player last year, and that was Francisco Lindor. And you could even say 90 points higher than everyone else. So, look, he changes the dynamic of the way that you approach a lineup. It is a well-balanced lineup, where most likely the Mets still have to see what they're going to do with at first base. Are they going to keep Vientos, move him over to first base, and then look for a third baseman, or trust in Beatty and give him an opportunity? Or are they going to go back to Pete Alonso and sign him? But is there enough money left in New York with Steve Cohen? I bet there is.
All right, let's take it to the other team there in New York, the Yankees. It's rare that they get outbid for a player, especially a guy they already had on their roster in their clubhouse this past season. What type of void does that leave there in the Bronx?
It leaves a tremendous void, because now we're going to see again how teams are going to approach Aaron Judge without Juan Soto, how teams are going to approach that lineup without two of the main guys, the two-hitter and the three-hole hitter in that lineup, the guys that can beat you at any time, especially with the discipline that Juan Soto has at the plate. Look, New York put in a valiant effort. 16 years. They're saying it's 16 years, $730 million. That's a very good offer. Yet, no one was going to outbid Steve Cohen. And the New York Yankees are now have to go and plan B. And trust me on this one, they did have plan B ready, and they should be very aggressive moving forward after missing out on Juan Soto.
Yeah, that was the big domino to fall in terms of position players with Juan Soto. Now we see what happens with other players. And to your point, what the Yankees can do to fortify that lineup now that Juan Soto is going from the Bronx over to Queens. Eduardo Perez here on SportsCenter. Appreciate you.
皆さん、今回の MLB 特集、楽しんでいただけましたか？ホアン・ソト選手の自由契約が、いかに MLB 全体の未来を揺るがす重要な決断となるかについて詳しく掘り下げることができましたね。彼のような26歳という若さで、すでにリーグを代表するスーパースターがどのチームを選ぶのか、それだけで各チームの戦略や競争力、さらにはファンベースの熱量にまで大きな影響を及ぼすことは間違いありません。このような劇的な瞬間を一緒に終えるのは、本当に野球ファンとして 幸せなことですよね。まず、ホアン・ソト選手が MLB で唯一のカナダ代表チーム、トロント・ブルージェイズに加入する可能性について考えてみましょう。カナダ全土での熱狂が容易に想像できます。ブルージェイズはすでにボービシェットやバージェロ・ジュニアといったスター選手を擁していますが、ソト選手が加わることで、その攻撃力は計り知れないものになります。さらに、トロントという一国、一チームの特殊な立場が、ソト選手の存在をさらに特別なものにします。翔平・大谷選手が、日本での影響力を MLB 全体に拡大させたように、ソト選手の加入は、ブルージェイズがカナダ国内だけでなく、国際的にも注目される存在へと進化するきっかけになるでしょう。一方、ヤンキースがソト選手を獲得できない場合についても考えてみましたが、彼らにとってそれは終わりではありません。ヤンキースは現在、多くの課題を抱えています。例えば、投手陣の安定性や守備の強化、そしてチーム全体のアスリート能力を高める必要があります。ソト選手を迎え入れることは確かに魅力的ですが、それだけで彼らのすべての問題が解決するわけではありません。むしろ、チーム全体のバランスを考えると、複数の選手を補強し、各ポジションでのパフォーマンスを底上げする方が、ヤンキースにとってより現実的かつ効果的な戦略かもしれません。そして、今回の議論で特に興味深かったのは、ソト選手を逃したチームがどのような動きをするかという点です。市場にはまだまだ優れた選手が多く存在しています。オスカー・ヘルナンデス、アンソニー・サンタンダー、ジャクソン・プロファーといった実力派選手たちは、比較的リーズナブルなコストでチームに貢献する可能性があります。ポストシーズンでの経験を持つこれらの選手たちは、ソト選手ほどの巨額な契約を必要としない一方で、チーム全体に多大な影響を与える力を持っています。こうした選手たちがどのチームに加わるのか、その動向にも注目です。さらに、ロサンゼルス・ドジャースの圧倒的な存在感も見逃せません。彼らは今や他のチームにとっての挑戦そのものと言えます。スター選手を次々と獲得し、リーグ内での競争力を高め続ける方は、まるで野球界のハーレム・グローブとロッターズのようです。しかし、このような圧倒的な強さを背景に、他のチームが新たな戦略を生み出し、対抗する努力を続ける姿もまた、MLB の魅力を引き立てています。例えば、サンディエゴ・パドレスは若手投手のロキ・佐々木選手を獲得しようとしており、彼がどのチームに加わるのかは、今後の注目ポイントです。また、アリゾナ・ダイヤモンドバックスやサンフランシスコ・ジャイアンツといったチームも、それぞれ独自の補強を進めています。ダイヤモンドバックスは、健康管理と選手層の強化を課題としており、ジャイアンツは、カンザスシティ・ロイヤルズのような守備力とスピードを重視したチーム作りを目指しています。これらの戦略が成功し、NL ナショナルリーグ西地区での競争がさらに激化するのを想像するだけでも、来シーズンへの期待が膨らみますね。今回の特集を通じて、MLB がいかにダイナミックで奥深いスポーツであるかを改めて感じました。野球は単なる競技ではなく、ファン同士、選手同士、そして国と国をつなげる力を持っています。この素晴らしいスポーツの魅力を、これからも皆さんと一緒に応援し続けたいと思います。もし、この動画や話題が気に入ったら、ぜひコメント欄で感想を聞かせてください。あなたが注目している選手や、どのチームが次に動くべきかについての意見を共有していただけると嬉しいです。そして、いいねボタンを押して、まだの方は ぜひチャンネル登録を。最新の MLB ニュースや試合のハイライトをお届けしますので、これからもどうぞお楽しみに。それでは次回またお会いしましょう。